Spring 1924, Sequoia National Park. A ranger named Walter Fry spots a lone grizzly, twice. In a forest that hadn't held one in 40 years, he hopes no one shoots it. This is the video where that hope turns out to matter more than anyone realized at the time. Someone probably does shoot it anyway. Off camera, off the record, it's never seen again. California's grizzly bear has been extinct for a century, and it's still on the state flag. Most people assume that flag is just a tribute. It isn't only that. California is actively studying bringing the species back, and hikers keep reporting tracks that don't match any bear that's supposed to be there. Here's what's real and what isn't. If California is seriously studying bringing grizzlies back to the mountains you might hike next summer, you deserve to know what the actual evidence says, not just what the state flag has been quietly implying for a century. The question isn't whether a grizzly is out there right now. It's whether California ever actually let the species go, or just stopped looking for it. Walter Fry didn't expect to see a grizzly. Nobody in Sequoia National Park had. Not for 40 years. Fry was the park's naturalist and a ranger, the kind of person whose job was to notice things and write them down carefully. In the spring of 1924, he did exactly that. Twice, he documented a lone grizzly moving through the park. A species everyone assumed had already vanished from that part of the state. 40 years without a confirmed sighting. Then one animal, alone, seen not once but twice by a trained observer with no reason to exaggerate. Fry wrote down something else too. He hopes the bear stayed inside the park boundary. He was worried that if it wandered out, some careless hunter would shoot it. That's not romantic language added later for a documentary. That's a park naturalist's actual concern, recorded at the time. The bear left the park eventually, or it didn't. Nobody knows, never confirmed dead, never confirmed alive again either. It simply stopped appearing in anyone's records. Does that prove the species limped on quietly somewhere in the Sierra Nevada? No. One bear, twice seen, then gone, isn't evidence of a population. But it is the last time anyone with credentials and no reason to lie put a grizzly sighting in California on the record. And that distinction matters more here than almost anywhere else in this case. Because everything the rest of this video covers traces back to it. The reintroduction studies, the modern track reports, the debate over what California actually lost. All of it starts from a single, undramatic fact. The last confirmed grizzly in this state wasn't declared dead, it just stopped being seen. Fry's sighting is a quiet mystery. What happened next isn't quiet at all, and it's a lot harder to explain away. In 1953, California made the grizzly bear its official state animal. Anyone can look that up. What most people never connect is the timeline attached to it. Last confirmed kill, 1922. Last sighting, 1924. Official state animal, 1953. That's not a tribute delivered while the species still had a pulse. That's a state formally honoring an animal it had already spent decades hunting to zero. Do the math on that gap for a second. 31 years between the killing and the crown. The state library's own record puts it plainly. The last one was killed years before California's Wildlife Authority even had the legal power to regulate hunting in the first place. By the time anyone in government had the tools to protect the grizzly, there was nothing left to protect. And the bear didn't quietly retire from the flag afterward. It's still there, right now, on the state flag. The state seal, government letterhead across California, and countless municipal logos and place names that carry its image without most people ever registering it. An extinct animal serving as the living symbol of a state that erased it. This is the fact this whole video sits on top of. Not a rumor, not a track in the mud, a verified 31-year gap between extinction and enshrinement printed on official documents you've probably seen 100 times without registering what it actually means. So when California studies bringing the grizzly back today, or when a hiker reports a strange track in the Sierra Nevada, none of that happens in a vacuum. It happens under a flag that's been quietly asking the same question for 70 years. What do you do with a symbol once the thing it symbolizes is already gone? The flag is an old irony. This next case is a current one, and we're going to be upfront about something before you even ask. It's the weakest evidence in this video. Near Frenchman Lake, in the Sierra Nevada, a hiker documented what looked like a possible grizzly track and sighting. Not a hoax, not a viral photo, a personal blog post, written by someone who genuinely wanted an answer. They did the right thing. They reached out to wildlife biologists directly. The response wasn't a confirmation, it wasn't a dismissal either. Grizzly bears, the biologists explained, are poor dispersers. Highly unlikely one would find its way into the Sierra Nevada on its own. But they didn't rule out a brown bear entirely. Highly unlikely, not impossible. You're already thinking it, and you're right to. California still has a healthy black bear population, somewhere between 30,000 and 40,000 animals statewide. Some of them are cinnamon-colored, even blonde. From a distance, in bad light, on a muddy trail, that coloring can look a lot like a grizzly. So where's the actual proof this is anything more than a misidentified black bear? Good question. Here's the honest answer. Most of these reports probably are exactly that. A black bear with an unusual coat, nobody studying this claims otherwise, no verified population, no confirmed photograph, no track anyone's matched to a grizzly with certainty. But here's what didn't happen either. No wildlife agency debunked this specific report. No refuge came out and called it a prank. It sits exactly where most of this video's evidence sits. Not proven. Not disproven. Unresolved. Because almost nobody in that part of the Sierra Nevada is looking closely enough to resolve it either way. A hiker's blog post is thin evidence on its own, but it isn't happening in isolation. And that context changes what it's worth. While hikers report tracks nobody can confirm, California's own scientists and lawmakers are doing something much harder to dismiss. They're running the actual numbers on whether this species could come back. In 2025, researchers published a study in the Journal of Heredity, sequencing genomic data from extinct California brown bear remains. Not nostalgia, practical. They were identifying a viable source population. If reintroduction ever happens, there's real genetic groundwork for which bears could actually do it. This builds on 2024 genomic work, placing the California grizzly within the same broader clade as grizzlies still living in the lower 48 states today. Not identical. Close enough that the science holds up. The state isn't just watching from the sidelines either. 2024, the state Senate passes a resolution, 38-0, declaring it the year of the California grizzly bear, marking exactly 1 century since the species disappeared. That same year, the state's own Fish and Game Commission marks the centennial too, and formally asks its wildlife department to report back on how other states have handled grizzly recovery. 2025, an independent coalition of researchers, the California Grizzly Alliance, releases its own 200-page report concluding reintroduction is very likely biologically feasible. 3 separate institutions, 3 separate years, same direction. Here's the thing about a paper trail this long. You don't have to take our word for any of it. The Journal of Heredity study, the 2024 Senate resolution, and the Grizzly Alliance's full report are all public and searchable right now, and we're going to keep tracking this one as it develops. Cases that stay open like this, with real institutions still actively working the question, are exactly what this channel exists to follow. So if that's the kind of story that got you this far, subscribing means you catch it the moment something changes. None of this confirms a single living grizzly in California today. What it confirms is that the state stopped treating the question as closed. The genetics, the resolutions, the reports, all of it exists because of one afternoon in 1922 that almost nobody remembers the details of. That August, a hunter shot and killed the animal that would go down as the last confirmed California grizzly. Sources vary slightly on the exact county. Some say Tulare, some say Fresno, but every serious account agrees on the year. And agrees this was the final physical specimen of the species ever recorded. No ceremony, no headline calling it historic. Just a hunter, a rifle, and an animal that had already been pushed to the edge of a state it once ruled without contest. Before that decline, researchers estimate roughly 10,000 grizzlies lived across California before the mid-1700s. 10,000, down to 1 hunter, 1 rifle, 1 afternoon. That's the scale of what happened here. 2 years later, Fry saw his lone bear in Sequoia, then nothing. Then 31 years of silence before the state made the species its symbol, then a century of that symbol sitting on the flag while the actual animal stayed gone. Every piece of this case runs back to that one August day. The genomic research exists to answer a question that only matters because of what happened in 1922. The Senate resolution exists to mark the anniversary of it. Even the track reports near Frenchman Lake only carry weight because of what was lost that year. That's the reason any sighting at all feels significant instead of routine. Here's the quiet thing worth sitting with. Nobody in 1922 thought they were ending a species. They thought they were dealing with one dangerous animal on one particular day. It became the ending anyway, whether anyone intended it or not. That's usually how extinction actually happens. Not one dramatic final act everyone recognizes in the moment. One ordinary day, followed by decades of nobody quite noticing what it turned out to mean. Next time you're on a trail in the Sierra Nevada, or you see that bear on a license plate without really looking at it, remember it's not just a mascot. It's a question the state has never actually closed. Go back to Walter Fry, standing in Sequoia National Park, spring of 1924, hoping his lone bear stays hidden long enough to survive. At the time, that hope looked small. One ranger, one animal, one quiet wish nobody outside the park would ever hear about. Now it looks like the first entry in a case file that's still open, a state flag built on an extinction the state didn't legally have the power to stop. A hiker near Frenchman Lake asking the same question Fry was asking a century earlier. Scientists running the genetics today to answer what Fry could only hope for back then. None of this proves a grizzly is walking the Sierra Nevada right now. What it proves is that California never actually closed this file. It just stopped checking it as often. Maybe that's the real difference between extinct and forgotten. California didn't lose its grizzly bear. It shot it, then spent a century missing it in public and studying it in private. Subscribe for the next case where the symbol outlived the species by a lot longer than anyone likes to admit.